practice hard. We take it, we be optimistic, and we gonna win games, bro.
All right, it is an Inside the Command Center Friday with lead writer for the commanders.com, Zach Selby. Zach, how are you, buddy?
Doing all right, yeah. Enjoying the good vibes on Friday. Yeah, I got to get out a little bit early, but yeah, we're excited for this another opportunity to get back to 500, and who knows what happens there? We're right in the thick of it for sure.
What is the vibe around the facility? I know they'll say all things up and playoffs here we come, but you're around the building. I trust you not to toe the company line and tell us really what's going on there. How does it feel at Ashburn right now?
It feels pretty positive, I would say. I don't think the one thing I have appreciated about the team is that despite the fact that they were 3-5 at one point and they've had some ugly losses, I don't think that this team has ever really lost any of its resiliency or any of its spirit. Because a lot of times you'll hear about some teams where they go down, they lose some games they're not supposed to lose, and then all of a sudden things kind of go off the rails. I don't really feel like this team is like that, partly because they've been in this situation before. I mean, they were at one point they were 2-5, 2-4, and right in previous years, but they always seem to come back around this time. So I feel like they're right on schedule to possibly do the same thing again, which is it doesn't do anything. It doesn't anything to ease my heart palpitations for the earlier part of the year. But the fact of the reality is that like they're not out of this thing at all. And despite some of these ugly losses that they've had, they are still in the thick of things, and these players know that. Like they know that they're still competitive, and they know that they're better than what some of those losses are. Now they'll still have to go out there and produce in ways that maybe they haven't always been able to do consistently, but it seems like the vibes are very high considering the situation.
You said the word consistency, and I think it's perfect. That is the key, right, to the season. And this is not something new that we just figured out right now on the podcast. The coaches know that. What is it that keeps us from that consistency? What is it that continually leads? And this is not the first time I've asked you this question on this podcast. Why must we start slow? The offense, we can get there. I understand the concepts of why the offense slow, but for the defense, I understand new parts, but they weren't new parts earlier. They were mostly the same parts in the same system. Why must it take us so long on defense to get our stuff together?
It's a layered question, right? But I think the biggest layer of all of it is the explosive plays that they've allowed. And they've allowed too many of them. I mean, I could go off and name a lot of them, from the 58-yarder against the Bears, like there was like the 64-yarder against, or whatever it was, against the Broncos. They've had a couple of other plays like that, like or against the Patriots. Like it's just been from one thing after the other. It's just been explosive plays that have kept these teams in games, and that's a problem because this defense is good in other areas, but for whatever reason, it just continues to be a problem for this team. And you saw some improvements there a little bit, but again, you really want to see that consistency get better in that area, because I think they can do it. It's just a matter of fixing some of these problems, some of these lapses and covers that have led to these to them staying around in games, or in the other cases getting behind double digits.
It's funny because I forget who tweeted that the other day, and they lead, I think, the league in giving up explosive plays. It's that and the oddest of turnovers, right? Like that they tend to turn the ball over in plus territory for them or minus territory, however you like to look at it, which puts the offense for the other team in favorable positions. What does Jack say about these things? Is this something that just takes, because maybe the back end is a little experienced? Is this something that needs time? Is this, the players will always take the brunt of the blame when things go wrong. Is this a coaching thing? Is this a details thing? Is this what do you think is the reason for an absurd amount of explosive plays given up on defense?
I think sometimes the doing your job to go back to that phrase that was kind
The
of
sign up on the wall.
But I mean, I'll give you an example. The 64-yarder that the Patriots gave up. So the linebackers, Jamie Davis, and I think it was Khalik, were running I think it's called a double dog, where like they
Yes,
slant.
line.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly. Yeah. So Jamin gets caught up in a block, and all of a sudden that creates a hole, and all of a sudden Stevenson is able to burst through there and run 64 yards. And you could see on the broadcast after that play, Jack's kind of telling him like, "Hey, man, you just got to do your job. Like that's just this is reality of the situation." I think it comes down to that. Like it's the old cliche about you got 10 guys doing their job. There's one person for whatever reason, not necessarily because they don't care. There's lack of effort. It's just they get caught up in a block or something like that. Like those lack of execution from person A all the way down to the last person creates these holes for defenses to go through. And you'll see, I mean, there's another example with the Devontae Smith touchdown against the Eagles. Like that was a complete lack of like busted coverage, lack of communication.
Danny Johnson is in the nickel on that one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if they can all just work together in unison more, like they're all working, they're all doing their jobs in different areas, but it's kind of like a whack-a-mole scenario in some instances where Danny Johnson might be doing his job on one play, and the next play he's giving up a long pass to Devontae Smith for a touchdown. So if they can all work together and do their 11th the right time, yeah, this defense can be pretty solid, and that's really what you want. We're not asking them to be a top 10 defense, even though that's what they were last year. If they can just be closer to average, I feel like this offense can help, which is crazy. I would never have thought that I would have said at the beginning of the year, but like I feel like this offense can work with that and put together some sustaining drives and help win these games.
This is year 4 for you covering the team?
5.
Yeah.
So I've seen a little bit of everything.
And so then the wild thing is we have never, much like in the kitchen scene from Friday, we never have two things to match, right? Like we got the peanut butter, we got no jam. We got the ham, we got no burger. When the defense is rocking and rolling, it feels like it's that time for the offense to take a week off. What do they say about that? Because I know they know about that in the building. It's got to be frustrating that it feels like years that we haven't gotten all three phases all three phases are capable of being really good. I believe that. But they have a hard time getting all three rocking and rolling at the same time.
Yeah, I think the players, they do feel that, obviously, and they are very frustrated. And I would say that last year when they went on that 6-1 run in the middle of the year, I think that was the closest to consistent on all three phases, at least up to their potential that they had been in any point that I've been here. Because like the offense really wasn't a world beater, but they were finding ways to make things work because they were able to lean on Brian Robinson and run the ball a whole lot. The defense was actually living up to its top 5 expectations. The special teams was doing its job. And I think now you're kind of started seeing, yes, the offense is starting to figure some things out, mostly because Sam Howell's starting to figure some things out. I think the special teams, after not having I feel like they had a little bit of a slow start to the season on special teams. I felt like sometimes the Tress was out kicking his coverage a little bit. The tackling was not at where I would more normally expect it to be. But I feel like now, especially with Jamison Crowder coming on, I feel like they're starting to get some of that momentum going. And then I think on the defense, it's a little bit of a slower process, right? Because of the third down conversions, because of the explosive plays, which has always been a problem for this defense, for a long time now. But you also see, okay, this Patriots game, I think that might have been something to build off of, because honestly, sometimes all you need is a game to get right. Because look at that Chicago Bears game last year. That was an ugly game by any stretch of the imagination, but for whatever reason, that got them going again. That was the start of them getting back on track and getting to 7-5. Now, it's hard to say what's going to happen in the second half of this year because there's a lot of really good teams left in their schedule. But that game against the Patriots was not pretty at all. But at the same time, the Patriots defense, the Commanders allowed the Patriots to only 17 points. I think that was like a third time in 4 weeks or something like that they've allowed less than 20 points. So that's a good sign right there. But that this might be the win in those tough games might be enough to get them a little bit more confident and get them to start playing closer to what you expect them to be at the beginning of the season.
Are we too hard on the defense?
No, I don't think so.
But to your point, they play this bend but don't break style defense. That is the game plan. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so they end up giving up like 14, 17, 21 points a game in that average. It feels like, minus some of these big plays and the random turnovers that put the offense already in field goal position. I understand that they are supposed to be what drives this team. But at the same time, it feels like look at the New England game. How many points did they give up in the second half? 3?
Yeah, 3.
So it's like, where is it? Like some of these games, like the Bills games or the Eagles games, we go into these things with 4-quarter leads, and then all of a sudden that they're not winning those football games. It's odd to say, are we being too hard on them because of the expectations? But sometimes it feels to me like maybe we are. I don't know. How should we be looking at it?
No, I don't think you're being too hard on them, because I think if you ask any of those defensive starters or any of the defensive players, they would say that while they've been playing better, it's still not good enough. Because we'll go back to the Patriots game again. Like, yes, they only allowed 3 points in the second half, and they were up 10-0 like in the first half. But look at this. After that fumble, the Patriots took a 14-10 lead, and with 2 drives lasting less than a minute on each of them. Like, it took like a matter of 86 game seconds for them to get back in the game and take a lead. So, and yes, some of that has to do with the Patriots had a little bit of a better field position because of the Brian Robinson fumble, but that 64-yard run was that was all them. So yeah, like, you see the moments where they really shine, but also you see moments where you kind of wonder, like, why, what exactly are you doing? Why are you giving up these plays? So it's a little bit of both. Yeah, like you see moments where they really shine, they live up to their expectations. Other moments where you say, I don't know what's going on. Like, this, it just doesn't make sense, because that they're better than, at least talent-wise on paper, they are better than what their product is. So no, I don't think you're being too hard on them at all. I think we had high expectations for them at the beginning of the year. They have not to this point lived up to that consistently. Although I still think they have plenty of opportunities to actually finish the year pretty good. Because remember last year, they didn't really start off that great either. They didn't start off that great back in 2020 when they ended up being a top 5 unit either. So I think all things you have to wait till the end of the year to get a full evaluation. But so far, I would say
that's because this group always goes on a run in the middle of the season.
Yep. Yeah. I think, Rivera is what, 9 and Rivera's team's 9-3 in November, which is awesome because it's my birthday month. So everything's a pretty good vibes for me.
How is it for you? You're employed by the organization. You write for the organization. The team has been in constant flux and turmoil basically since you've been here. How do they respond to you? How do you feel about towing the line between being a company man, and there's got to be points where it's, you got to be hard on the team. I mean, that's required from the job too, is to be honest, right? How does it sit with you on that? How do you work that? I've always been curious about that.
Wow, yeah, asking the deep questions. I don't think I've ever been asked that
Friday, just before happy hour.
I think it is an interesting question, because my job is a little bit different than some of the traditional reporters, right? Because, like you said, I do work for the team. Our philosophy over the last few years, I would say, is that our jobs first and foremost are to highlight the players and celebrate the wins, provide hope whenever is appropriate. At the same time, we're not going to be homers at all. I played the game, like even though it was a small Division III school, I played the game. So it doesn't sit well with me whenever a team is getting blown out 40-20, and we're losing games that we should be winning. I don't like that, and I'll tell you, like, that game against the Bears was not good enough. I mean, last year, it was 2021 when they got blown out by the Cowboys the day after Christmas Day. That was not good enough. Like, there are a lot of games that I've been seeing that that are not up to the standard that they have said. And a lot of that goes back to me conveying the message to the team. The team says that they're not good enough. I'm going to say that because I am a mouthpiece for the team.
Yep.
So if they're saying that, hey, we need to be better, I'm going to say, hey, we need to be better. Here's why we need to be better, and here's what we did to show that we're not good enough. At the same time, I'm not going to drive that point home because sometimes simplicity works. Like if they say they're not good enough, here's an example why. Let's move on. And then whenever we win, like with Emmanuel Forbes, like Emmanuel Forbes had a good game last week against the Patriots. We're going to celebrate that because it's our first round draft pick. Now he still has to prove it. I mean, the one game does not mean that he is completely exonerated of letting these coverages go and everything like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean we can't celebrate the victories in a small way. So to celebrate small victories in a small way, I think is the best way to approach it. Now we can celebrate the big victories later on. Now if he shuts down DK Metcalf, we got to go off because that's pretty great going for the rookie. But at the same time, like we're going to put things into context, celebrate them where they are appropriate and how they are appropriate. I think is the best way to say it. But so it's a mixture of we want to be fair but not homers, but also highlight the players and celebrate the team when it is appropriate.
Have you been too critical of the team and told so?
No, never been told so. No, I never have. Because I mean, now like I think there is certain maybe like you'll have to learn how to maybe use your language a little bit more properly. So if I say like I can't say like like they suck, but I can say like hey like they need to be better. Like I mean, so like there is a way to be critical and fair without using hyperbolic language. I think that's honestly a completely different like tangent. I feel like that's something that maybe like today's like society doesn't really like get, is because it's either one extreme or the other. It cannot be like a very like straightforward objective way of looking at things. It has to be either they suck or they're the greatest team ever. There are ways, like I said, there are ways to criticize the team and be fair and honest without using that kind of language that it maybe is a little more emotional than some people might use.
Emotional. I appreciate that. We'll go on Twitter and say it was a trashy performance, but not you.
No, of course not. I'll say, well, it was not up to expectation, which is both. I mean, both sentences may be true, but it's all a matter. It's all a matter of perspective.
I think that's comes from a loving place. I think my mom would say you could do better, and my dad would say that was terrible. You're going to have to do better. Two different styles of loving there. I can appreciate that. Zach, the head coach told us all off season and all to start the season that the quarterback was going to be a work in progress, that it would be slow to start, most certainly, just because. And it's kind of been that way. The problem is that the team has shown enough. Here's what I think. The team has shown enough flashes to get the fan base excited, right? If this was a one-win football team like the Panthers are doing now or like the Bears are doing now, and you had this first-year quarterback with a brand new head coach and a brand new staff and all the things, I think the fan base would already resign itself to what that season looks like. Again, this is not that season that the Commanders have been telling you that they're trying to have, right? Like, yes, we're going to take lumps, but this is a team that can win, maybe even forced to sell at the deadline. Where are we with the progression of Sam? Where are we with Ron tells us? Where are we? What is the juxtaposition between needing to win right now and looking to the future? I know that's a big question with a lot of different layers, but I think they all feed in together.
Well, so here's what I'll say to the latter half of that. Like, every team is always looking to win right now, plus win for the future simultaneously. So like that. So I mean, that maybe that's to differing degrees for different teams, but like that's always the case for every team. Now, in terms of the development of Sam in general, I think it's still a long road between now and like whatever like the finish line is. Although I'd probably say that no quarterback would ever say there's such a thing as a finish line. But where you're at, like you feel pretty good about it, right? I mean, I think the protection has been his biggest problem. Learning how to feel pressure, learning how to get the ball out of his hands. I think that has improved in the last couple of weeks. Because of the game plan has honestly, I think that these past 2 games have been Eric Bieniemy's best called games, in my opinion, because of how he's able. Yeah, I think he's using his personnel really well. I think he's getting the ball out of Sam's hands a lot quicker. Their passes are closer to the line of scrimmage than they were maybe 6 or 7 weeks ago. I think that's really helped Sam out a lot. I mean, some of this crazy.
You think EB got here and forgot that it wasn't Pat back there to begin the year?
No, I don't think that. I think he's a little bit smarter than that. But I think it's just all about learning what the team needs at the right moment. Like, give you a good example of like how valuable it is like trust your playmakers. Antonio Gibson has 227 receiving yards right now. 220 of them have been after the catch. That's all a matter of like.
And he needs more work, right? He needs more work.
I mean, I'm sure he would definitely say that. I mean, I always like watching AG play because I think he's a very dynamic player. But I think Sam's development is on track. Now we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves yet, because as much as I know this team really wants to find a franchise quarterback, and God knows I do too, like it's all, you're never going to get there in one game, or even maybe even a season. But the fact of the matter is that Sam has a big arm. He's accurate. He's poised in the pocket. He's very calm. He knows how to put balls exactly in the place where only his players can catch it. And this, like, off the field stuff, the way he handles press conferences, to me, it's always been very impressive. Like, he's very mature in front of the microphone. He answers every question very thoughtfully. He sounds like a guy who like gets it. Like, and that is a good. That doesn't necessarily mean he will be the franchise guy. But the fact that he's already saying that kind of stuff and he has that kind of like poise with the reporters, that is something for sure. So again, long road ahead. Still got to hit some of those rest stops, but I guess you're the first leg of a cross country trip, and like you got a long way to go. You guys still got to get to California, but you're in Iowa and you're feeling pretty good right now.
Are you going to be the one that gets him to eat a piece of steak?
Probably not. I feel like he's been so committed to that bit. I don't even really know if it's a bit at this point, but like he's been so committed to that fact that like I don't think anything could really, unless like they win a Super Bowl. Maybe that's what it is. But I think he is red meat free.
I saw a quote, and maybe it was in Stan Diggs' article, but it alluded to the idea that the offensive line would like to run the ball a little bit more. And you know how this works. It allows them to get a little nastier. Yes, the screen pass is essentially a part of the run game. And they do that better and better each week. I'd like to see more. But I understand what they're saying. Are we resigned to the idea that Eric Bieniemy, for the first time here in a long time, has brought what most people would consider new age offense, that you pass to get a lead and then run to protect it, that you can throw the ball to back up defenses and then create the spot to run in, the opposite of we're going to smash the ball, make them get up close, and then we'll throw it behind them. Where do you personally stand on that fine line? I think we know where they stand.
Well, as a former offensive lineman about 70 or 80 pounds ago, name me an offensive lineman that doesn't want to run the ball more. like seriously, like every offensive lineman wants to run the ball more. So I don't think that's more like just a statement of fact as opposed to like maybe being critical of the team or anything. That's just the way it is. Like no offensive lineman was preferred to be in a pass set more than run blocking, getting downfield in somebody's face. But that said, I mean, personally, yeah. Like, I mean, would I like to see the ball run more? Like, yeah, sure. But like at the end of the day, that's not who Bieniemy is. Like Bieniemy is going to
because he was a running back too, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. He says that he blames Andy Reid for that, but here's the thing: like I answered this question to John Boyle, my counterpart with the Seahawks, and the way I put it is, he asked me whether it was a combination of them being down in games, Bieniemy, Sam Howell, like And honestly, it's an answer. It's a combination of all three. Like, yeah, they have playmakers on the outside. They've got Terry McLaurin, who's one of the best receivers in the league right now. You've got exciting options in Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson. Like, yeah, like you're gonna want to try to revolve your game plan around your three of your best playmakers. Two, you've got Sam Howell, who has, like we've already talked about, has the arm strength, has the ability to make those throws. And then three, like whether they are behind in games, whether they are competitive games, whether they are ahead in games, Bieniemy is going to throw the ball a lot, no matter what. Because look, they were ahead in the Patriots game. They still threw the ball. They were competitive against the Eagles in both times. I think Sam Howell ended up throwing the ball almost 40 times in both of those games. Like he had to throw the ball 52 times against the Bears, but that's not. I think that's less of a situational thing and more of that's just what this offense is. Like they're going to pass the ball a lot. They're going to try to get the ball to their best playmakers, and they're going to use the run game to complement that as opposed to the other way. I think, and honestly, if they win, who cares how many times they throw the ball? Like that.
I agree.
Yeah, like if it works, it works. And lately, it seems like it's finally starting to click and get better, as opposed to they're throwing the ball 40 times a game, but they're still losing. Like now, they're starting to be more competitive because of the development of Sam in the offense. So
they showed a graph. Did you see this? Commanders last in the league for teams that go run, pass to start a series from first down 5 times all season. Does that surprise you?
No, because like I said, that's just who this offense is.
Right.
And I think, if you had Logan Paulson on this show, he would say that is exactly how modern offenses run.
I've had Logan on. He did say that.
I would say, yeah, sure. I still want to see the ball run more because I personally think, and this is just my bias as a former offensive lineman, I think there are very few things in this world that are prettier than a well-executed run play in terms of just like blocking, in terms of running backs hitting the hole. I think it's just is gorgeous to me watching a defense just kind of fold in that scenario. But at the same
Terry
time,
blocking on that Brian Robinson touchdown, beautiful thing.
Exactly, yeah. But at the same time, like if they're going to pass the ball 40 times a game and it's been like this for the last couple of weeks, I'm all for it because hey, I'd rather pass the ball 40 times and win as opposed to run the ball 30, 40 times a game and lose.
Here's a statement. I'm curious whether you think it's true or false. They have put Sam into the fire, assuming that helps his development more than if you actually ran the ball, say 35 times a game and only allowed him to pass it 15 times, which doesn't help anybody right now. You think that's true or false?
I don't think it's necessarily true because, again, I think that's kind of just who Bieniemy is as a play caller right now. I think it's just
there's a school of thought that suggests if you don't allow the quarterback to pass as much, you will be keeping him from failing.
True. And here's what I've been thinking.
I believe that, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and here's what I've been thinking about for the last maybe a week or so now that Sam is starting to develop more as a passer is I know a lot of people both on the Twitter /X sphere and a lot of other people have said that like Sam has a lot of passing yards right now, but he's also thrown the ball I think 54 times more than the next person. And yeah, that's true. But also at the same time, you have to remember this is a first-year starting quarterback with what's going to be 11 starts under his belt, and they're trusting him enough to throw the ball 354 times. Like that just doesn't that to me that does, like you look at any other first-year starting quarterback in the league right now, I bet you that they're not taking that approach. Why? Because maybe I don't know for whatever reason they trust Sam more to do that and put the ball in his hands to make plays as opposed to I don't know, maybe I don't know what Bryce Young's stats are, but I bet you he can throw the ball 300 times. I think it's all a matter of I think they trust Sam to actually make these plays. And he's going to make some mistakes, sure, because he's a first-year starter, but he's also shown me he can make some really, really exciting plays too. So I think, like I said, I think it's more of just a product of Sam's development than anything else.
On Tuesday evenings, we do a all 22 film breakdown show here with Mark Bullock and Nick Ackridge and my buddy George Carmi. We have been theorizing that some of what Larson provides is calls at the line. That we can only guess on that because we're not in the room. Do you know whose job it is to make the checks and protections at the line? Is that a quarterback thing, or are we seeing that Larson gets a little bit more than Gates does, and that's some of what we've seen helping the last couple of weeks? Do you know whose job and responsibility that is?
Well, I mean, here's what I will say. Like, I don't really know if like Larson has more or less responsibility for making the protection calls, but I do know like the center is usually the one who makes those calls.
Right.
And I would say there's probably a little bit of Larson plus Sam, because I know Sam is also like Rivera said that Sam is also involved in making some of those protection like calls and like shifts and everything like that. But Larson's also a very smart player. So, and he has a really good grasp of what the offense is doing. So I would say it's probably a little bit of a marriage between him and Larson. So I don't think it's on one person specifically, but I would say that Larson has a big say because he's a smart player and he's a veteran guy and he gets it.
Was Gates brought in here because Larson wasn't ready?
I don't know.
Were they always looking? Did they always see him as an upgrade to Larson, or was he brought in because they didn't think Larson would be ready in time?
I don't necessarily think it was necessarily like about Larson specifically. I think it was more about they liked Gates as a player. I think that they liked what he brought. I think he does bring a certain nastiness to the position, which I've always personally appreciated because you need to be at least a little nasty if you're going to play on the offensive line. I don't think the two are necessarily connected, like as much as some people may think. I think it's just they saw a need because they've been running through centers the last couple of years, and they liked what he brought to the table. So there we go.
Will we see more Cole Turner?
I hope so. I think Cole Turner. Yeah, I mean, I think Cole's he's an exciting player because of what he does in the red zone. I think that's been the case since his days in Nevada. I he's been on the field. It just seems like he hasn't gotten as many targets, and maybe it's not like quite the situation with Jahan Dotson, but like maybe it sort of is because you have a lot of playmakers on this offense between the receivers plus Logan Thomas plus B-Rob and AG. Like somebody is going to be left out occasionally. And sometimes it's a big name like Jahan, other times it's a smaller player like Cole Turner. So I think it's going to come down to the opportunity. I think and now again, like Cole Turner has to make some plays for sure. He has to show that he's worthy of those plays. But at the same time, I think if you give him the opportunity, I think he can do some things as a receiver.
And I got to say, I've been on this train for a while. I know I've said it to you. I like Bates. They like Bates, right? He underrated hands, the best blocking tight end we have, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think he's one of the best blocking tight ends in the league, like because of how physical he is. Yeah, he does have very good hands.
Is that what keeps Turner off the field? Is his blocking ability?
It might be because I know they're trying to do a lot of different stuff to kind of help protection out a little bit, and Bates is just like a better blocker than a lot of other people. But yeah, like Bates doesn't get the ball often, but he has some really good hands, and when he does get the ball thrown his way, like it's pretty often that he catches it. So again, I think it's a mixture of like he offers a lot more abilities as a blocker than some of the other guys on the position. But at the same time, like he has enough of a wrinkle in the passing game that makes you think, okay, like we can do a little more with him besides attaching him and just letting him block some defensive ends or some outside linebackers or something.
They were sellers at the deadline, and I get that. They got good value despite what some may say. I think it was excellent value. They were not sellers on the offensive side of the ball. Was that about Sam's progression more than anything else?
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, because
they had pieces that had to have gotten something back, right? Like I would have thought that Gibson might have had some value. I thought maybe Diami Brown had a little value. Anybody that's not coming back, I thought maybe had some value.
Because I'm not part of those conversations, and I don't think Rivera would ever pick up the phone if I ever did decide to be part of those calls. But I do think that, if you really believe in Sam and you think he could possibly be the guy, which I mean, by all indication, they do think they could be the guy. You want to give him as many weapons and opportunities as you possibly can. And it's kind of hard to do that whenever you're trading away pieces of the deadline. Maybe AG was like, you hear reports all the time about who is and who isn't, and you can't really say whether they're true or not. But at the same time, like AG, like he's been like he had a pretty decent game against the Patriots. Like he did.
Very good game.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you want to give Sam as many opportunities as you possibly can, and I don't think you can do that when you maybe try to be a seller at the deadline, because even though maybe his offense is a little packed in some cases, like it's that's a good problem to have.
I had Seth Walter on the other day from ESPN. We were talking a little bit about Eugene Shen. What do you think his eventual role with the organization will be? And will he have, do you think, input into like the next GM? Like, is that where he's at? How much voice will he have? It's obvious he got hired first. So it feels like he's way up there in the organization. How much of a day-to-day say and how much with the rest of the organization do you think his input will count?
Well, in terms of what his role is going to be, I think it's mostly just going to be like with on the field roster building related stuff. Rivera hasn't spoken too much on exactly like what it's going to be in terms of his role, but like he did say that he was part of the discussion in terms of some trade talks about like what kind of value that could be brought there. And I think that on its own is going to be pretty helpful. I think you're really going to start seeing the value of it maybe in the offseason, with the offseason, like with the free agency acquisitions and the draft stuff. I think that's probably where you're going to see that the shades of that a little bit more. But I think that's, it's kind of hard to say exactly what he's going to be since he just got here. Like literally, his official day was literally just 4 days ago. So it's hard to say exactly what all that role is going to encompass. But I think you can say for sure, like off-season acquisitions, roster building stuff, and maybe a little bit of some game plan situations. I think that's really the big trifecta of what he's going to help you with.
Last one. What does it take to get this W out in Seattle this week? 6.5-point underdogs. The over-under, I think, is right around 45.5 somewhere. What do you like? What do you see?
Well, I think there's a couple different things, and a lot of them kind of go back to things we've already spoken about. I think the big one is you have to stop the explosive plays from the Seattle offense. Because look, this Seattle offense, like they don't do a whole lot particularly well. And they average less than 100 yards on the ground. Their third down offense is not great. It's in the bottom third of the league. Like their passing yards are not spectacular, but when they want to, they can flip the field, especially with DK Metcalf, who I think 7 of his 28 receptions have been at least 20 yards. Then you have Kenneth Walker III, who has 5 runs of at least 20 yards. Like those things, like you may not be able to, they may not be able to do anything much with you on third down, but if you give them the opportunity, they will hurt you in a lot of different ways. And that's a problem that Washington has had, as we've talked about. Like they're solid in a lot of areas. They are, but the explosive plays just continually give them problems. And if they can figure that out, if they can force the Seahawks to just dink and dunk downfield, I don't think Geno Smith and that Seattle offense is going to be able to sustain that for 4 straight quarters, because they really do rely heavily on DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tyler Lockett, like their playmakers, just leaning on them to just come up with a miracle play. So if you can stop that, you got a very legitimate shot. Offensively, you got to, like, it's such a cop-out answer, but I think it's really important here is like you got to manage the crowd noise. Like you have to, especially with a young quarterback who's never been in that situation before. I know I get it for all the college fans out there who say that, oh well, the college environments in college game are just vastly different and arguably better than the NFL. At the same time, there's not I don't know, but like I don't think there's a whole lot of stadiums in college who have their stadiums specifically designed to focus all the crowd noise onto the stadium. Plus loud noises are loud noises. Like it's going to be a problem. It's going to be an issue they're going to have to overcome. I think they can do it because Sam is a very calm demeanor. Like he has a calm demeanor about everything. It's going to be tested here. like severely, especially with like if he's going to make a lot of calls to the line, if he's going to make some protection like fixes. That's going to be a problem that they're going to have to overcome. And I think on top of that, going back to the offense briefly, is like or the defense briefly, you have to get Geno Smith, like get him and get the ball out of his hands. Like
Are they going to blitz? Are they going to blitz more to make up for the two ends gone, or no?
That's a fascinating discussion, and I think they could maybe do more of it because they didn't have to do that as much whenever Chase and Montez were here because they had 4 good pass rushers. Now that they've got solid pass rushers now. I don't think it's definitely like not the same. So they might blitz a little bit more. But I think it just really comes down to just to flat out just making him force because secondary needs to do a better job of like forcing him to make difficult decisions because he's shown you. I think he's thrown an interception in at least one interception like all 4 of his last.
He's not having the same year he did last year.
No, exactly, and he fumbles the ball. He fumbled the ball 3 times in the last 3 games. Lost 2 of them. So if you can force him to make some bad decisions, like or at least maybe some 50-50 balls, you've got a shot to make some plays. Now, what's been frustrating about this defense is that they've had a lot of near interceptions. They probably lead the league in like near interceptions. So if they can figure out a way to just like get their hands on some of them, like I think they're gonna have some opportunities to make some game-changing plays here. And you really need that against this crowd because if they see those explosive plays, they're going to yell at you and scream at you and just be even louder. So I think if you can get those 3 things down, you've got a pretty good chance to beat because the Seahawks are beatable. I think they've got a good shot to win this game. They have to execute, but I think they've got a real legitimate shot here.
Where do you like the score at?
What did you say the over-under was?
45.5.
I think it's going to be, if I had to guess, and for all the NFL like, FBI agents are out there, like, I'm not participating in any kind of gambling or anything like that, so please don't call me. But I would guess that it's going to be a very low-scoring game. It wouldn't surprise me if like that total was under, but I would say it feels like it's either going to be a shootout like it was against the Eagles, or because of the explosive plays, or it's just going to weirdly be like a 14, 10, 12, like this slugfest.
I think I put in our weekly pick 'em. I think I went 2017 Seattle, something like that. But I'm with you. I think they're going to slug it out on Sunday. Mm-hmm. I know you, real quick before we get out of here, I know you said you're not traveling. How do you enjoy watching the games when you're at home? You'll have a couple cocktails, a couple light beers. What do you like to do? You're all by yourself. You're all by yourself with the doors locked. What
drinking on the job is never a good idea. So I won't be doing that. So one thing that's really cool is like I get to hang out with the broadcast team at the office in Ashburn. We hang out in the conference room, kind of like a little mini war room. Logan Paulson is normally there with whoever we have on the post game show, and we get a chance to talk ball for like 3 or 4 hours, and that's honestly like I love being at the games. Like I always want to be at the games more than watching on TV, but I do really enjoy those discussions because like Logan's a really smart guy, and I get to have some some more intense like discussions about ball whenever he's there.
I can dig on that. All right, brother. I appreciate the time. Always enjoy your weekend and the game, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Absolutely. Hopefully, we're talking about a win next time.
I hope we are. Thanks, bud.
Yep.